at the different descendants. Those are the three sons. Where they filter out to, where they're at, kind of some of the important people and some of the important nations that came from them as well. And then the influence and effect that those nations had on the nation of Israel for years and years to come as well. All that was kind of set up during this time. All right, that brings us to chapter 11, and we're looking at the actual spreading of the nations. More than likely, chapter 11 took place before chapter 10 in the history of the Bible. We're looking at a timeline. Once, of course, Tower of Babel, God spreads the people out, and He spread them out in chapter 10, but it's kind of wrote it down beforehand. Kind of see where we're at. And so this is chapter 10 is what happened. This is why it happened essentially. Chapter 11 is spreading down these nations. And we know this story pretty well. But we'll look at it. And you got to consider now kind of the way this has kind of gone on now. Tower of Babel, of course, is what chapter 11 is on. And it begins with the fact that all of the world at this time, all of the people are essentially talking and speaking the same language. Okay? And of course, we know the advantage of having the same language and what that would have been, how that would have been beneficial to all of these people, because if everybody can communicate and look at a piece of wood and say this is a piece of wood and all know exactly what they're saying, it would have allowed for community, it would have allowed for people to build things and work together and all kinds of stuff. But they had been given specific instructions that they were to spread out, be fruitful, multiply, and all this kind of stuff. So we kind of see why these people kind of congregated together. Okay, first 4 verses here of chapter 11, and we'll get into this. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. I'm going to there. I can hear myself moving. So we see now these people are together, and they have come up with this decision of building this city and this tower, and they want to build it as high as they can possibly build it. They want to reach up to heaven, essentially, and it's going to be the greatest thing that this portion of the earth have ever seen, and they're going to build and build and build and build and build. So the fact that all these people have the same language, somebody like Nimrod, who we talked about last week, who was kind of the very first, after the flood, he was kind of like the first dude that kind of showed up, was the leader of things, and kind of built these people and kind of led them. We saw him kind of talking specifically about that in chapter 10. So with them all having the same language, Nimrod could have very easily led with his ideas, his propaganda, his hate speech efficiently and very effectively. Worship of whatever deity that Nimrod wanted would have been together in uniform, and there would have been very, very few cultural barriers for Nimrod and these people to overcome. Okay, they're all speaking kind of the same language. So the universal language at the time of Babel here was doing exactly as we would expect it to do. It was bringing the people groups together for common goals. But the problem with those common goals were, of course, they were ungodly. They were not godly in any way whatsoever. Even the fact that people were together and doing these things was a problem, because it specifically, God blessed Noah and his son, instead of them, be fruitful and multiply and do what? Replenish the earth. Not replenish this area, right? Not replenish this little place, the earth, the entirety of it. So we can see why this was the opposite of what God wanted them to do and why it was a problem. The people of earth here joined and settled in Shinar, and Shinar is where Nimrod built part of his kingdom. And look at verse 10 of chapter 10, and in the beginning of his kingdom, talking about Nimrod, was Babel, and Erech, and Agad, and Calneh, and that was in the land of Shinar. Right, so Nimrod sees this place, figures it's a good enough place, starts to build his kingdom there. Okay? Now, probably the leader and the rebellion against God was kind of the main thing that he was working and trying to do. And we don't see immediately anywhere in the scriptures kind of his name mentioned in that context. But if you go back in human history and look at some of the stuff from Nimrod, we've got a lot of the paganistic things that we have today. Okay? And a lot of the secular ideas on men following after what they think is right and then developing their own truth. A lot of this comes from the religion that Nimrod was kind of teaching. And you can see that in some of the cuneiform that's being written and found from this area that they're unearthing and kind of reading all the time. Okay? We could spend a lot of time with a lot of and see some of the stuff that's kind of happening, some of the stuff they're worshiping. The ideas they were coming up with were opposite of God and coming directly from Nimrod's teaching and his propaganda kind of sending this stuff out. Okay? Not a good tube and causing a lot of problems, obviously. All right, now, so in verse 1 of chapter 11 here, we see that kind of goes through all the way down through verse 9. The way this is kind of written is kind of worth noting. A chiastic structure is the way these 9 verses are written, and simply what that means is it's a literary way of writing things to show contrast. All right? So as we read down through the first 9 verses, this is written in a way of opposite contrast to what the Lord wanted. So we see a big contrast between the people of Babel and God as we kind of go through this. And the way that this was written that way purposely to help emphasize that everything that people were wanting to do was the opposite of what God wanted them to do. Okay, that's why it's written the way that it is. And eventually, of course, they're prevented by God too. The account that we see here turns to God here in verse 5. It kind of comes down and sees what's going on. Let me show you what I do. All right, here's this idea, this chiastic, I guess, way of writing that kind of shows this contrast. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And so we see that in the whole earth was of one language. They found a plain in Shinar and go to us, make brick. Let us build a city in the tower. And let the Lord came down to see the city in the tower. We kind of see this. So let's look at verse 5 here. The Lord came down to see the city in the tower, which was of the children. Which was being, so the children of men building. So the structure of these verses here emphasizes these 2 different contrasts where the humans are proposing this plan of building this city and building this tower to reach up to the heavens, and then God disposes of the plan and let us go down. We'll see here in a little bit, and the name of it called Babel. And the Lord therefore did confound the language of all the earth. You see the idea, humans have the plan, God doesn't like the plan, God changes the plan as he disposes of it. That's the contrast that we see here in these verses. Okay? So like the pre-flood generation, the descendants of Noah saw no reason at all to be honoring God here. Okay? No reason at all. And instead of honoring God, they're honoring themselves. Look what we can build. Got all these people together, had the same ideas. They were make mortar and stone and all this stuff and build. Let's show our might. Let's show our greatness of being who we are by building this huge tower all the way up to heaven. That's essentially what's happening here. Okay? They wanted to make a name for themselves. They want to have something there that they knew that, hey, it's Nimrod, that's his people, and they built this huge tower in the heavens. The reason that they are constructing essentially a skyscraper here so that they could glory in their achievements and see their achievements and kind of have some pride in it. Okay? Look at verses 3 and 4 again. And let's look at the attitude that they kind of had about building this tower and kind of the similarities or parallels of the attitudes of people who maybe today have. And they said one to another, "Go to, let us make brick, burn them thoroughly, They had a brick for stone, slime they had for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. See any parallels there between their attitudes and maybe society's attitude today? Do you see anything? Where's the focus? Themselves. Where's the focus of society today? Self, right? Ourselves, making sure we're in the forefront, making sure that we have the biggest buildings and the biggest bank accounts and all that kind of stuff. So you can kind of see some parallels there. And if we see the last part of verse 4, they want to build this because, for what reason? Make a name and life. The very last part of verse 4 says. So we can stick together. God said move, we're not moving, we want to stick together. This is something we can kind of go together with, making sure that we're doing what we want to do, making sure that we are in the focus, make sure that we are in the best possible position that we can consider ourselves to be. Okay? So with this idea in society today, we see a denial of the true God, and the belief that we have a right to dictate our decisions, a right to dictate what we want to do, and a right to make our own decisions. Of course, we know that is not the case at all. If we make our own decisions and don't allow God to infiltrate them, it may work out for a while. A lot of times we're pretty smart. We can know them a lot of times. But eventually it's going to fail, and it's going to fail 100% of the time. It's just the way it works because we are flawed in our nature. Okay? We like to dictate our own right and wrong, and that is not the case at all. All right, so the tower builders here are directly rebelling against God's desires, even to the point that they said that they want to be scattered abroad in verse 4. So they're driven here by their own ambitions and their desires to thumb their noses at God a little bit, kind of a little bit. Okay? I think kind of give to show that they're greater than He is. Now, these people are not that far removed from the flood. Okay? Now, it's been some time, but they would have known very much about the flood. And they would have been told about it, and it would probably have been a dinner-side talk a lot of times is about the flood and what happened and what their grandpas and grandmas did, or great whatever it may have been. So they would not have been that far removed from the flood. They would have known pretty much exactly what had taken place. And probably, maybe we're still seeing some of the effects of the waters receding at this point. I mean, they could have been, realistically could have happened. So they would have known that the world was different not that long ago, and then God had to come in because we thought we could do it on our own. Right? They would have consciously had that idea. God's destroyed the world once with water because we thought we could do it, and they just didn't care. Right? That see how far and how quickly the depravity of the human heart can fall away from God. It didn't take very long at all, and kind of go right back into things God had to judge the world before we start with. Okay? Apparently at this time they thought they would have been more successful, and God was exposed, God is weak here, and that He couldn't do anything about it. So given the purposeful rebellion going on here, the Tower of Babel must have been a religious temple with a platform at the top from which the builders could worship the stars or the sun or whatever it was they're worshiping instead of worshiping the true God. Around this area, ancient ziggurats found around this area, and these same ziggurats kind of found around the globe, probably modeled after the Tower of Babel that was built here. In fact, most pagan religion, have their roots in the religions that started in Babylon. Okay, so it all stems essentially from the beginning of this Tower of Babel. The deities of the pagan gods, the Roman gods, the Greeks, the Egyptians, all of them are traced back to Babylon's original array of gods that they were worshiping. Okay, so all of the ugly stuff, essentially, the false stuff that we even today see and have seen through human history, generates and starts here at the Tower of Babel. Okay? Now, the heavens were very important to the people that were building this. They see some importance there. And they wanted to connect the tower to the heaven. They wanted to get up there where the stars and the sun and stuff were because they thought that heaven, they were worshiping. It was very important to their tower connecting with the stars, providing a high place to worship their gods. The signs of the zodiacs that we have now may have originated with the pagan religions of Babel. As a matter of fact, I was listening to something earlier this week that younger people, the religions that, the traditional religions of Judaism and Christianity and even Islam and stuff that have been around and established for a long time, a lot of younger people are forgetting those, even though their parents brought them up in that. And they're actually chasing or following after astrological signs, spiritual healing, meditation. They're kind of focusing more on those types of pagan ideas and moving farther away from even some of the religious stuff. I was listening to a podcast of a young man talking about that this week, how more and more prevalent is the astrological signs and stuff. To me, it's mind-blowing. I don't have any knowledge of that. I don't know what they are. But I do know that the high school kids that I deal with are talking more and more about just what kind of sign they are, the Cancer or Sagittarius or whatever it is, and how it influences and how they act the way they do per month because of whatever it is. So I just in the last 5 years, I've seen more and more of that pop up just among teenagers. So I kind of thought that was interesting, even farther moving away from themselves. It all generated and started probably here at the Tower of Babel, kind of where this all kind of came from, which I thought was kind of interesting. So all those things have their roots traced back to the Babylonian originals, religions and gods that they had. So the ambitions here of the tower builders to make a name for themselves was obviously evident in their religion. They wanted the power to create their own gods. Okay? They did not want to answer to the actual creator. Right? That's the whole point of having our own religions, right? If we can generate our own religions, we can come up with our own gods. If we can come up with our own rules that we like, we don't have to answer to the one true God, the one true creator, the one true rule setter, right? If we can make our own truth up, then we don't have to follow into the absolute truth that God gives us in Scriptures. And it allows us to have more, what we think, liberties in how we conduct ourselves. Because we don't have any opportunity to worry about consequences for sin. That's what all it boils down to, right? I don't want consequence. I know there's consequence for sin. I don't want to deal with the consequence for sin, so I'm going to come up with my own religion, gods, whatever it is, so I don't have to worry about the fact and think about it at the present time. Now, obviously, we know that eventually it's going to judge anyways. What God does, has to. But presently, for us, day to day, we can come up with our own ideas and our own stuff. We don't have to worry about it as much. We can kind of put that back in the back of our minds and not worry too much about it. So these people were building this to look at the stars, to worship the stars, to come up with their own gods. Let's go over to Romans chapter 1. I'll show you something kind of interesting, I thought. And go to verse 18. So let's think about the reason here that people were building this tower. Let's look at verse 18, 19, and 20. And knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed of the law. I'm sorry. Yeah, that doesn't feel right. Verse 8 doesn't, chapter 2. For the wrath of God is revealed from the heavens against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in righteousness. Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath shown it unto them. For the invisible things of him from creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Creation is here, even the stars are meant to reveal what? Creation, the stars, the stuff these guys are worshiping here. It was there for what reason? To reveal what? To show what? God's majesty, his power, and his greatness. Right? So they are worshiping the stars, and God put them there, and we know other scriptures that he placed in each one of them, put them there, a name for all of them, exactly where they're all at, and put them there for a very, very specific reason. Okay? Go to Psalms 19. And the first 4 verses of Psalms 19. The reason they're doing this. First 4 verses say this: the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork.
Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. What do the heavens, what do they effectively communicate about God here? According to Psalms.
Glory.
As glory, right? His glory again, his power and his majesty and who he is. The heavens are so filled with wonder and amazement that no one could possibly miss the message that God is revealing to us in all the glories of the heavens. So no one could be excused for not knowing God, because God reveals himself in his creation. David in verse 3 there of chapter 9 of Psalms 19 says that the language, that there is no language, in which creation's voice is not heard. We all can see it. No matter if we had 5 different people here who spoke different languages, we'd all understand creation and the glory of it that is there. Okay, that's why God is, it's the universal language. We all can see the majesty of it. But instead of seeking to know the Creator, what we're doing here is suppressing him and worshiping their own gods. Okay, so we see the first thing is their people's pride. We go into verses 5 through 9. The back part of this is the judgment of their pride. So if we're reading through those with me, please. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build this other city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did therefore confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So we see the builders of Babel here went on their way to continue to do what God didn't want them to do. They thought God was too distant, maybe God was too disinterested to even intervene. But God actually, we see in verse 5, he's up in heaven, and he comes down and stands there and sees the Tower of Babel. He comes down to it. And there's some irony here, right? Because these people are trying to build their tower where? Up, right? And what does God have to do to come see the tower? You've got to come down, right? So you see the irony there. It kind of shows the ineffective, inability for man to even do what they were trying to do. Okay? So we see that kind of go in there. I know they're kind of come down to see that. Now, we don't know how tall the tower was at this point. The modern Burj Dubai building, which is one of the tallest, I think it may at this point be the tallest, it stands 2,717 feet tall, which is really, really large. And it's located in the city-state of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, over on the Persian Gulf. Now, probably the Tower of Babel probably wasn't that high, because they wouldn't have quite had the technology yet to do that. Pre-flood they could have, post-flood they couldn't have. But even that tower that's 2,700 feet tall, which is high, but that was relatively small in the comparison to God's creation. The building would be dwarfed by Mount Everest, right? You consider Mount Everest is almost 30,000 feet. You kind of see the difference in God's creation and man's creation. And countless other mountains as well that would have been taller than that. The earth itself dwarfed by the sun, which is dwarfed even more by the size of the Milky Way galaxy, which is not even a mere dot on all of the galaxies in the universe in totality. In other words, the Tower of Babel would have been a microscopic, inconsequential in size compared to the scope of the entire universe. No No wonder God had to come down to see this small little thing that these men had created in the metropolis of this city that they're trying to build. He's not impressed with this man-made structure in the midst of his awesome, unfathomable creation. The tower is just simply built on the earth at this point. Now, it wasn't the size of the tower or the city that they're building that drew God to the scene. It was the wickedness of the people and their pride and outright defiance of what God had told them to do. The building of the tower, the ongoing religion that was there as well, that was in defiance and rebellion against God, and the brazen way in which they were displaying it. God saw it, saw the world headed for the same evil that he'd seen before the flood, and wanted to do something to come in and break up the unity here, as you see in verse 6. So we said, behold, the people is one, they have one language, and this they will begin to do, and know nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. So he sees the evil that is heading down the line for these people. Okay? So the focus here of the judgment of God was the language that they were speaking. And so he takes the language and confuses it, and then gives each one a different language, whatever he may have done, to help make these people disperse. Now, there were more severe judgments that God could have done to these people. God would have been just again in destroying these people and destroying all these people again with any means necessary with the exception of a flood. He could have done whatever he wanted to and got rid of them again with the exception of a flood. And he would have been justified in doing that. He didn't. So how foolish, how simple the inhabitants of Babel were. They thought themselves invincible. They thought themselves unstoppable. They believed they had foiled God by completing this tower. And God had not been foiled at all. So verse 7, let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So you've got all these people here in this environment who are used to talking to each other. And we see God going down and confusing the people's languages so that they couldn't understand each other. Now, imagine just like this, 5 minutes before God shows up and 5 minutes after God shows up. Okay, let's just kind of imagine this for a second. They're there, they're working, they're worshiping together, they're talking, and Nimrod's there, and he's probably giving a speech, and everybody understands him, and then God shows up and then changes the language, and Nimrod's talking, and everybody's just kind of looking around each other because nobody can understand anything what they're saying. Mass and total confusion and chaos, right? I mean, you trying to explain something, me and Mike have been talking about something, and then right in the middle of the conversation, I'm speaking a different language, and he has no idea what I'm talking about. You can imagine the confusion here, right? And the chaos that took place. And it wasn't just like half these people were speaking one language and half these people were speaking another language. God changed all of it. They were speaking all kinds of different languages. From the Aborigine stuff to the clicking that they do, to speaking Chinese, to speaking Arabic, to speaking English, it all changed. There are all these people right here. So you can imagine this confusion that was going on. Also consider Nimrod here, the leader, how he now feels completely helpless because he can't get even his top guard that probably stood by him all the time and helped him make decisions. They probably can't even talk to each other anymore and understand what's going on. So there's a huge amount of confusion here. And I would imagine Nimrod probably tried to keep the city together, but he couldn't because nobody knew what was going on. The confused languages destroyed the people structure. Okay? Didn't destroy the tower. It destroyed the people structure. The tower stood there for who knows how many more years. Okay? But the unity that built it never again seen. The building site was called Babel, a word that had 2 meanings. The Hebrew word for Babel means confusion. To the people, the word meant the gate of God. The people saw their city and the tower as a gateway to get to God. God saw it as a place of confusion. Now, the judgment at Babel is often seen as not as important as the judgment of the flood, but mankind's sin here was just as equally serious to that. God had to intervene again to address the pride of mankind and to thwart their plans. And if you see verse 9, not only did he confuse the language, called it Babel, and founded the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the the earth. Not only did he change the language, he shot them out everywhere, okay, and sent them other places. And I'm sure after some time that people that spoke the same tongue kind of grouped together because they could understand. But God also forced them to move. So he put in them the want to move out and go other places. I was reading one thing this week, very legitimately could have happened that the people that spoke, just Chinese, for example, that God just took them and stuck them there, where they're at now. He just physically moved them just because God can do that, right? He has the ability to do that. There's a whole thing you can kind of read about that God just confused the language, and then he put the people in there they needed to go, which would be kind of wild too. That you're looking Tower of Babel and then move you're somewhere else you didn't know with people in the language you're speaking, which is an interesting idea as well. So he moves them and pushes them out. Let's finish up real quick. I've got 5 minutes and we'll take 2 to do it. All right, last thing here, verses 10 through 30, is the continuation of the line of Seth. Now, these 20 verses, the writer of Moses here goes back to the line of Shem, the line God had chosen, of course, to be the one through which Christ the Redeemer would come. Most of the line is a repetition of the list in 20 through 30, so that's what we'll read. The genealogy from chapter 11 lists just the firstborns and goes to 10 generations instead of 5. So we got the name Terah here and Abraham are included as that becomes more apparent as we jump into chapter 12. Of course, we know who Abram is and kind of important. So go to 21. Let's read down through verse 30. And Ruth lived after he begat Sarah 207 years and begat sons and daughters. And Sarah lived 30 years and begat Nahor. And Sarah lived after he begat Nahor 200 years and begat sons and daughters. Nahor lived 920 years and begat Terah. And Nahor lived after he begat Terah 119 years and begat sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of nativity. In the land of his nativity, in Ur of the Chaldees, and Abraham and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarah, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, and father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarah was barren; she had no child. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, his son's Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came into Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. We see also, just as a quick note, the lifespans are much shorter now than they were before the flood. And we see now, go back to the line of Shem. The reason is that now focuses back in on Abram. Of course, we know Abram. We know the story here. This is the line that Christ comes from. So we're going to kind of hone in here on the people of Israel and how this kind of gets started through the rest of the book of Genesis. So right after he mixes up the language, he re-emphasizes the line of Shem to show again, even during the rebellious time of God's sovereignty over humanity, he can stop their plans. And man can try to stop God's plans, but man will not. God's plan for a seed to crush Satan's head continued without interruption, just like it was no big deal, even though all these people now are in different places. Okay? So we see in verse 30 of chapter 11, because it's going to come important to us in the next couple of weeks, is that verse 30 specifically talks about Abram's wife Sarah. And of course, we know up to this point that Sarah, as it says in verse 30, is barren. Meaning she of course, can bear no children. So God is in verse 30 here in these last verses of chapter 11 setting up some tense years and some lessons to be taught through the people we've just now been introduced to. God goes through the line and introduces us to Abram and Sarah because the next several chapters you're going to be talking specifically about Abram and show the lessons that he's going to teach Abram as well as God waiting, or he having to wait on God and all the stuff we're reading into. Okay? So that kind of moves us out of the history of, we'll call it man, and now we jump into kind of the history of Israel, and kind of the focus of the book goes on that, and of course get into Abram and all the other stuff that we're going to see through Genesis. Next week we'll start Abram's family, and God selected him to be the father of the nation. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the lesson we had today, for the fact that you had to come back down and fix our problem once again, that you do over and over and over again. And thank you for your faithfulness to it, and faithfulness to us as well, that regardless of the ideas that we think that we have, we know better. Lord, show us how we're wrong and how we're right. I pray we continue to stay faithful to